FDO, FTF, first day out, bitch. Fuck the feds, walked out the jail. I saw 6 phones. I just got out the bunk bed.
What up, though? And welcome to 922GTV, the only podcast out here that is pro 2A, anti-regulation. We talk guns from the mindset or the perspective of a convicted felon. Me, your host, Inspire the Block. What up, though? Make sure y'all please subscribe, like, comment, and share 922GTV on all streaming platforms, whether it's audio or video. Once again, I want to thank y'all for tapping in with your boy continuously. Y'all already know this is part 2 of a conversation that we was having already previously on the Corrected Felon Podcast. If you've been rocking with me over there, then you already know this is part 2 of the legislation that was just enacted over there in Mississippi regarding juveniles being sentenced the same as adults for firearm crimes. Now, once again, remember I told y'all, socially, that's a conversation that that we just had. And on the Second Amendment side, I believe there's some things inside this legislation, minus the conversation that we had regarding juveniles being sentenced to the harshest penalties of the law like adults. But once again, they did put in there some ideas that I think neighboring states or other states can mirror when it comes to everybody having the opportunity, especially those who of sound mind that isn't a criminal out there committing crimes. I'm not talking about a prior felony conviction. I'm talking about somebody that's not committing crimes, that is not in prison, that isn't on parole or probation. And also, you remember, if you follow me, you already know I gave a formula as to how I believe we can actually have felons in a position here in America to where having a felony conviction won't be a problem, based on the requirements that I believe you would have to go through in order to have a gun in America, if you've been convicted of a felony. And this conversation that we're going to have today on 922GTV mirrors that conversation, because once again, I believe in the bill that Mississippi just passed, or the laws that just been passed July 1st of 2026, regarding the idea of stolen firearms and crimes connected to them. Like, I think that this is where, if we're going to institute some gun regulation, we can have a lot of gun regulation regarding stolen firearms, making that be the crime instead of somebody getting pulled over with one on them and it's only simple possession. Like, we got to have this conversation today, because we can't continue to criminalize the whole idea of just somebody having a gun on their person makes that a crime. Now, I'm going to read for y'all, in part, not in totality, but in part, the legislation that Mississippi had passed regarding this idea of stolen firearms. And if y'all see me in listening land, in video land, you can see that I got a New York Knicks jersey on. Shout out to rest in peace to my Uncle Michael. This was his jersey. We recently just buried him about 4 days ago in Chicago, Illinois. It was one of his items that my aunt, his wife, wanted me to have. And so this pod is dedicated to him. My uncle, rest in peace. We're going to miss you, Uncle Mike. And so I'm rocking this jersey based on his behalf. But yes, so once again, Mississippi has I believe, a great idea or a model for other states when it comes to crimes or being caught with a firearm and the crime not being connected to it. Like I said, if there's a crime connected to the firearm, that's a total different conversation. But if you're somebody that's driving in your car and you decide you're going to go to the store real quick, you get in your car, you take your firearm on you, just because you're a felon, if you get pulled over in the process of this, just going to the gas station to go get whatever you wanted to get and come back home, you get pulled over, the police find a firearm in your vehicle, that should never be a crime, regardless if you're a felon or not. That should not be a crime. But what could be easily a crime in America, like in this bill, that has been enacted in Mississippi as of July 1st of 2026, Senate Bill 2710, Section 2, which is Section 297-37-35 Mississippi Code 1972, is amended as follows. 1. It is unlawful for any person knowingly or intentionally to possess, receive, retain, acquire, or obtain possession of a possession or dispose of a stolen firearm or attempt to possess, receive, retain, acquire, or obtain possession or dispose of a stolen firearm. Now, if we're going to have any, in my opinion, firearm regulation in America, this is one that I believe is fair. Stolen firearms. No different than you can get in trouble for having a stolen car, a stolen credit card, right? You can get in trouble for these things, but in the idea of the Second Amendment, this is where we can draw the lines unless, and I'm all for it, once again, if there's a crime attached to the firearm, then all is fair. But what I want to have a conversation with in America, and we have to stop doing this, in my opinion, is criminalizing simple possession of a firearm on you. And once again, with the model that Mississippi has provided, I'm all for the idea of there being punishment for a stolen firearm. Yep, any gun that a person is caught with and it is reported stolen, yeah, you got to get in trouble for that. In Section 2 of the Mississippi bill, which I'm going to add further, it says, Section 2, paragraph 2, it says, it is unlawful for any person knowingly or intentionally to sell, receive, or transfer a stolen firearm or attempt to sell, deliver, or transfer a stolen firearm. Any person convicted of violating this section shall be guilty of a felony and shall receive a punishment as follows. For the first conviction, punishment by commitment to the Department of Corrections for 5 years. that I think that's fair. On your first felony conviction, and I'm talking about for adults. Let's make sure that we have a clear distinction of what I'm talking about, because this bill is actually tied to juveniles being caught with guns up under these same circumstances, but being tried in adult courts for these crimes. Now, I'm separating the two. I'm talking about strictly adults. I believe that what they've been able to develop in Mississippi regarding firearms and the violation of them, I think is a perfect model. Like I said, I'm going to read not all of it, but a lot of it I am. Now, maybe all of it now to think about it. But let's dig back off into it, because once again, I believe that states in the South as well as the East, West, and the North can take this model and implement it to where the Constitution, the Second Amendment, will apply equally to everybody in America. So for Part B, it says, for the second and subsequent convictions, the offense shall be considered trafficking in stolen firearms, punishable by commitment to the Department of Corrections for no less than 15 years. So if you traffic in stolen guns, then your minimum is 15 years if you get caught doing that. That's fair. That is fair to me. C, for a conviction where the offender possesses 2 or more stolen firearms, the offense shall be considered trafficking in stolen firearm, punished by commitment to the Department of Corrections for no less than 15 years. You get caught with a couple of them, same difference, right? You don't necessarily have to be trafficking a whole bunch of them, but if you get caught with 2, yeah, that's the same thing. For a conviction with a sale, delivery, or transfer, this is D, of a stolen firearm, or the attempt to sell, deliver, or transfer of a stolen firearm was to a person who is under the age of 18 years old, the offense shall be punished by a commitment to the Department of Corrections for no less than 10 years, but not to exceed 20 years. Now, once again, this is where they're migrating the difference. And I'm making a clear distinction on that. Like, I don't support minors or children being sentenced for firearms in the same capacity as adults, especially for a stolen firearm for simple possession when it's regarding children or minors. I'm gonna go down just a little bit more. It says for a conviction with a sale, delivery, or transfer of a stolen firearm was for a firearm that was subsequently used in an attempted murder pursuant to section 97-1-72, murder or capital murder pursuant to section 97-3-19, or child homicide pursuant to section 97-3-25-2A, the offense shall be punishable for no less than 10 years, but not to exceed 40. See, like I said, I agree with this stuff. Once again, long as it's separate from children, but adults, I think that this can be modeled. All right? Once again, we're talking about the ideal of stolen firearms being used to commit crimes, and I'm willing to go on record to say that even on simple possession, if the firearm is reported stolen, your ass in trouble for simple possession, but not for possession when the firearm is not reported stolen. Because you can be gifted a firearm, right? You can be gifted. If it's not stolen, not reported stolen, then you should have the right to possess that. Right? Thinks it makes sense to me. Let's go down. Now, this is section 4. It says any person who commits or attempts to commit any other crime while in possession of a stolen firearm shall be guilty of a separate felony of possession of a stolen firearm under this section, and upon conviction thereof shall be punished by commitment to the Department of Corrections 15 years, such term to run consecutively and not concurrently with any other sentence of incarceration. I mean, sometimes we just got to take the good with the sweet. With the bitter with the sweet and maintain. If you want to commit these crimes, especially with a stolen firearm, because sometimes people do break into cars and steal somebody's weapon and go commit a crime. People break into other people's homes, steal their firearm and go commit a crime. So yeah, if you're in possession of any stolen property and commit a crime with said property, you have to suffer the penalties of that crime. Because for one, the firearm wasn't yours to have in the first place. So you shouldn't have had it. So once again, I'm for that. It was a stolen firearm. Let's keep reading. Now this is section 3. If any person shall willfully and unwillfully shoot or discharge a firearm into an assembly or group of 2 or more people, the offender shall be guilty of a felony regardless of whether anybody be injured thereby, and conviction thereof shall be punished by commitment to the Department of Corrections for a term of no less than 5 years, but not to exceed 15 years, or by fine or not more than $10,000, or both such imprisonment and fine. So you busting a crowd, no matter if you hit nobody or not, you got to go lay down for 5 years, no less than 15. Especially if the gun was stolen. And those won't be concurrent. They'll be consecutive charges. So say, for example, boom, you bust into the crowd. That's the attempt murder. Even though you didn't hit nobody, it still was attempt murder. And on top of that, you got to do the 5 years on the bare minimum for the stolen gun in which you shot into that crowd with. Even if you was chasing somebody, boom, stolen gun, that's the 5. And also 2, boom, the whatever the other charge is. And they got to run, like I said, consecutive. In section 3-2, it says, if the shooting or discharging of the firearm into an assembly or group is at a church, synagogue, temple, or other established place of worship, courthouse, school, playground, or park, the offender may be punished by a fine or imprisonment for no less than 5 years, but not to exceed 20 years, or by a fine not more than $20,000. Keep in mind, because I can hear people now, oh, that's not enough time. They are separate charges. Because if you shoot somebody inside the church, that is a charge. If you shoot somebody, period, that's going to be a charge. But on the minimum, because you used a stolen firearm, there is a charge for that, and you will do no less than 5 years, no more than 20. This is the guideline range for that charge. Section 3 of Section 3. If any person in the assembly or group is under the age, well, once again, I'm going to skip that one because this is talking about the separate parts of this bill that I agree with and I disagree with. I disagree with charging juveniles with the same crimes and penalties as adults. So here's another one. It says, and this is the last one, I'm going to read this one. It says, if the offender is a street gang member or a gang member, as those terms are defined under Section 97-44-3, or a member or a terrorist organization, the offender may be punished by a fine or imprisonment for no less than 10 years, but not to exceed 30 years, or by a fine not more than $20,000, or by both which imprisonment and fine within the discretion of the court. 5. A terrorist organization for the purpose of this section is an organization that makes terrorist threats as defined under Section 97-7-75, or an organization that commits an act or acts that meet the definition of international or domestic terrorism under U.S. 18 U.S.C. 2331. This shall take effect and be forced from and after July 1st, 2026. So once again, I support the whole ideal of the model for the sentencing of being in possession of a stolen firearm. I think those are fair charges that American citizens can deal with throughout the country. Because once again, if you're in possession of anything stolen, it was never yours in the beginning for the first place. And on top of that, you had the nerve to commit a crime with the stolen weapon or stolen property, then yeah, those should be penalties, man, greatly come behind that. So once again, as a convicted felon, these are the ideas that I support when it comes to our Second Amendment. I don't support blanketed exemptions for people when it comes to their Second Amendment right. I think that every case should be on a case by case level, except with situations like this. Once again, when you're in the possession of stolen property. So those are my thoughts for 922 GTV, part 2 of the Corrected Felon Podcast. Make sure y'all tap into that. And like I said, we got to start having these general conversations around the right to protect yourself if you're facing imminent danger. Everybody should be afforded that right. Just because you're a felon or not, if you're not somebody out there committing crimes, you completed your sentence and whatever supervised release behind that, whether it was probation, parole, or whatever it was, and you've been free back into society and you're not a repeated offender, then you should be able to have your gun rights restored after a certain amount of time of being free from obligation of supervised release or from prison as a whole. If you go back and listen to some of my older podcasts, I give you numbers and I give you statistics regarding how the United States Department of Justice view recidivism here in America. There's a lot of information regarding that you can go find for yourself to really make a right determination if you believe that people with felony convictions should be barred for life from their Second Amendment right. You go do the numbers. We'll go look at the numbers. They're accessible. That information is right there. If I know about it, so do you. Or if it's accessible to me, it's accessible to you. So don't be afraid to have the conversation, because just because somebody made a mistake once in life does not mean that they forfeit their right to protect their own life or their property or their possessions, especially if they're of sound mind. And once again, forgive me or hate me, but if you've been convicted of a sexual crime, I think that your exemption should extend longer than those who've committed other crimes. Because my belief, it is what it is. But people commit crimes of passions of sex, That's something that they like to do. So once again, I don't think that they should be barred for life, but I think that people who've been convicted of criminal sexual conduct cases, your barment, it just extended a little bit longer than everybody else's until you can prove to society that you no longer have this urge to sexually assault people, especially women and children. My belief, my opinion, you don't like it, who cares? But once again, I think that we can have regular, sensible gun conversations in America. America is just as equal to guns as guns is just as equal to America. And for those that don't like to have these conversations, I'm pretty sure there's a group of people that you can find that's more than willing to sit down and talk with you about your anti-stance of guns. But here on 922G TV, we pro-guns. It's nothing but guns because we believe that guns preserve life, because there's some nuts out there that deserve to be I'm gonna leave it just at that. Like I said, because listen, man, this world is going crazy, and everybody deserve the right to preserve their life. And once again, make sure y'all please subscribe, like, comment, and share 922G TV. This is part 2 to part 1 of the conversation that we had regarding or surrounding the bill that Mississippi just enacted into law regarding juveniles being persecuted to the same extent and level as adults regarding stolen firearms. But also, too, Mississippi did institute some good ideas regarding punishment around stolen firearms. Let's all have a collective consensus or a collective conversation on these issues without wanting to killing each other and hurt each other just for difference of opinions. It's your boy Inspired the Blog. Rest in peace, Uncle Michael. I got the New York Knicks jersey on for you. Until next time, man, make sure y'all stay safe out there, stay strapped up, and have a blessed day on purpose.